Salutations and welcome to Glitch Bottle, the podcast where we uncork the uncommon in magic, mysticism, and the generally misunderstood. I'm Alexander F., and today on the podcast we have a double threat for you. Authors and magicians Aaron Leitch and Rufus Opus join us. Now, Aaron and Rufus are both accomplished mages, authors, and friends, and the phrase friendly verbal jabs is something that both gentlemen mages are very familiar with. And I have to say that this is probably the most wild of all of the podcasts that we've done so far. Aaron and Rufus talk about how they met, the differences between their approaches on magic, advice for beginning magicians, and some honest, laid-bare discussion on the Golden Dawn and the O.T.O. Magical Lodge systems, and so many more topics. And now to help us uncork the uncommon, I give you a conversation between Aaron Leitch and Rufus Opus. Aaron and Rufus, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Sure, no problem.
Great to be here.
Now,
yes,
Rufus.
We go too much further, I'd like to clarify something. I don't actually like Aaron. He's one of the rudest people. He started a flame war against me like 2 years ago, out of the blue. Was it 3 years ago?
Oh, God. I'm not even sure anymore.
I don't know. But
lost in the annals of history at this point.
There was a time where he turned me into a newt, and I have not forgiven him. So, just for the record, I did.
Let the official response from Aaron Leitch be, quote, "You got better." That is awesome. I've had the privilege to speak with both of you gentlemen on the Glitch Bottle podcast in previous episodes, and Rufus, you were the first person to throw down the Solomonic gauntlet, so to speak, by saying, and I quote, "Aaron Leitch is the biggest poser on the planet. He is also my nemesis, and Aaron Leitch is also one of my best friends." So Aaron, in this,
I never said that.
And he is denying saying it, but the tape might exist somewhere. So my question for Aaron is, Aaron, in the spirit of a balanced platform, would you like to respond? Do you also see Rufus as an enemy, a friend, a colleague, a mystery wrapped in an enigma? What's your take on this?
Oh, he's a total fraud. I mean, everything he ever learned, especially the stuff you learned from me, total nonsense. You can't trust any of it. and then he goes and he after years of bad mouthing magical orders, he goes and he joins the O.T.O. And he's lost into all that Lima stuff now. So I mean, he's an okay guy. He's all right. I mean, if that's the path he wants to follow, I'm sure it's all right for him, But
right, do it thou will, right?
Exactly. And meanwhile, the rest of us can study real magic and get shit done and that kind of thing. So I mean, But everyone's got to do their own thing,
Yeah, so, I consider myself sort of a wandering preacher. I'm bringing magic to the O.T.O.
Okay, so Aaron, why don't we start with you, because Rufus talked about this last time. When you guys first started to communicate, get to know each other, Rufus, I remember you mentioned the Yahoo group that was magically focused. Aaron, can you talk about when you and Rufus first started talking?
Yeah, that would have been on the Solomonic group, on Yahoo group. So yeah, ancient history there.
2006.
No, it had to be before that.
Nope.
Was that group even operating in 2006? I can't even remember now. But it was before Yahoo did the changes that made the Yahoo groups just unusable. And that's when I abandoned that ship and just moved on to Facebook. But yeah, back in those days, that's where we met Jake Stratton Kent. That's where Rufus Opus surfaced. There was a lot of movers and shakers back then in the early days when most people were still afraid to mess with the Grimoires, or thought that we were insane for wasting our time with all that superstitious nonsense. Oh God, Zadkiel. I hope he's out there listening. I know he's still out there. I haven't heard from him since we published the Ritual Offerings, which you're in, by the way.
I know.
And, yeah,
I have a copy.
I figured I'd remind you.
I was one of the 5 people that bought it.
That's right. Oh, it was you. You were one of them, okay. But yeah, so it goes way back, and that's the primordial beginnings of what would be the Solomonic group on Facebook. So we had a lot of fun back then.
This is a question for both of you, but Rufus, I want to ask you, did you ever think that when you and Aaron were in the Yahoo group years ago, then you were having these discussions, did you ever think that it would get to the level it is now, where both of you are well-known authors, you're both accomplished magicians? Did you ever think that it would get to this level in those early days?
Part of me expected it to, because, since I read Robert Anton Wilson when I was 16, I kind of... Donald Michael Craig when I was 16, I've kind of expected to end up in this particular lifestyle. I mean, I've thought, holy crap, these are people that are making money talking about magic. Are you kidding me? Of course that's something I want to do, So I think throughout my life it's been like a long-term goal for me to end up where I'm at, I think. But I didn't really, when we started when I started interacting with Aaron and other people on the Solomonic group, I definitely did not expect to ever be. I never expected to turn it into what it is today, of course. I was actually just working on my own self and trying to deal with, personal issues using magic. I wanted to get money. I wanted a better relationship. I wanted to be a decent father to my kids. I actually was interested in the great work. I wanted to do that work in a way that was useful to myself and those around me. So that was my primary goal. I was not interested in doing the writer thing, but, to be honest, across my life, it's been sort of an expectation that would happen.
Aaron, for you, obviously, from our last discussion, you actually wrote Secrets of the Magical Grimoires, actually penned it in the late 90s, early O's, but in terms of a digital presence, do you kind of feel along the same lines as Rufus, like when you first started getting together in an online format?
My answer, I'm ashamed to say, would be much like broader Rufus Opus's. But you threw that little thing about the digital format, and that's kind of interesting because I'm an old codger now, and I was around before there was these here interweb things, and I actually saw this be born and begin to take hold and begin to spread as the internet snaked out through our culture and society. I mean, we couldn't turn the internet off now if we wanted to. Our economy is too entrenched in it. And back in those very early days, if I say Podsnet, does that ring a bell to anyone?
Oh.
Okay, definitely RO here. But yeah, Podsnet.
Alt.net.
Yeah, right. Or back in the old FidoNet. There were days when what we called the internet was a series of bulletin board systems, which was, somebody was geeky enough at that time to have a computer in their house that was always on and plugged into their phone line. And you could call them up, and they'd give you like maybe 10 or 15 minutes of time that you could poke around on their little system, and then they'd kick you out for the next caller to call in. This is primitive Stone Age stuff.
But it was basically the same as the Yahoo group.
Honestly, and it's a lot like what became the alt groups later on. And so back in those days, they had Podsnet, which was, what was that? The Pagan Occult Distribution Network. I forget what the S stood for.
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
That's where all the pagans of the day, actually, the geeky pagans, the cyber witches, would get online before there was an online. And so back in those days, and I was just young enough, and I had always wanted to be a writer. And I tell you what, trying to become a published author through the traditional old pre-internet channels is a nightmare. I mean, you send stuff off to publishers and you never hear from them again, and it's a hard thing to break into. And once the internet started to kind of take hold, I saw there an opportunity to actually go into forums where people are interested in this kind of stuff and have discussions and learn and share what I was learning and become known as a reliable source of information and just build my reputation little by little through there. So I actually planned from the beginning to eventually farm that out into a publishing deal, and it eventually worked, thank God, right at the just before the century turned over, and that's when an acquisitions editor from Llewellyn, who was a member of some of the groups I was in, decided to kind of recruit me in and have me write some books for them, and I've been with them ever since. So that's how I got into the whole digital thing. It was definitely a planned and targeted agenda that we had from the beginning.
Wow. And Rufus, did you find that as well? Because I know that the digital footprint for both of you gentlemen, you know, people are constantly talking with both of you online. Obviously, if you look at Aaron's Doc Solomon's YouTube page is putting out videos. You're online. We're doing podcasts and putting stuff online. Do you, Rufus, also find that for you is this kind of an integral part of what you do, or is it different the way that you look at the whole online digital footprint?
Oh no, it's entirely. I would not be Rufus Opus and have a published book and several ebooks and courses and all that crap without there being the internet. Like I said, in 2006, I joined the Solomonic group, and Aaron didn't mention it, but he formed that group to discuss Secrets of the Solomonic Grimoires, right? I mean, that was his original intent. It was
marketing, yeah.
Yeah, it was marketing. You know, I started talking to people there, and I found the Trithemian system of conjuring things, and all of a sudden, you know, I found this awesome group of magicians who they came from a ceremonialist background, but they were not interested in, you know, vibrating god names so that we can have power. They were actually interested in doing the magic. And I took a look at the Goetia, and the Goetia was really complicated, you know. So I was like, So I found Trithemius, and it was super easy. But it was the Solomonic Yahoo group that gave me the answers and gave me the guidance that I needed to actually implement it. And it was really useful and cool to hang out with a group of magicians who were doing this stuff practically. You know, Aaron is in that stupid what's it called? Golden Dawn? Golden Sun? Golden, I don't know. Not the neo-fascist one. But
oh boy.
The other one. You know, and when I found out he was Golden Dawn,
it was the one that Crowley learned everything from before he did the O.T.O thing.
Right, before he destroyed the Golden Dawn. Have you not read the history lection, for fuck's sake? I mean, seriously. Oh, wait, are we allowed to cuss on this?
Oh, please. The more cussing, the better.
Right, okay. So, so before Crowley destroyed the Golden Dawn, it was a useful tool to lead to the
They sure have been around for a long time for a destroyed order.
Yeah, look how great they're doing. Can we just give each other shit about this for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so honestly, Aaron, when you guys go to temple, what the hell do you guys do? You do initiations and then you go home? That's your lodge? That's your group?
We do the same stuff you guys do, only we do it the way that it was done before Crowley ruined it.
You do a mass? You do a mass.
We do a Eucharist.
You do a Eucharist. I did not know this. I thought that your temple stuff was just all this, just initiations, and then you go home. Maybe some black coffee and no alcohol.
It might have been more about them, their lodge systems you didn't know about.
Well, perhaps. But no, I mean, is it fun, or is it just boring ass bullshit based on bad Egyptian?
Complete boring bullshit. The last 20 years of my life dedicated to complete boredom.
That makes sense. You know?
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Talisman consecrations, light invocations, had Yothiel drawn down on me once.
Oh, like Annie Besant stuff?
No.
When it comes to the relationship between lodge magic, whether it's the O.T.O. or the Golden Dawn, and actual personal, individual, say, grimoiric-based magic, can you guys talk about, especially since you come from, the Golden Dawn and O.T.O. respectively, can you talk about that interaction? Is it something that it's completely intertwined and the magic happens just as strongly in a lodge setting as it does in a personal temple setting? Or can you guys talk about that relationship with lodge magic?
You framed it in a lodge magic being group and grimoire magic being at home personal, and that's not really the correct. That's not how you would describe the two, because you can do Golden Dawn work personally, and you can do Solomonic work in a group. The Lodge magic, however, that's Western mystery stuff. That goes, I mean, not only to the Masonic orders, but to the old chivalric orders, all the way back to the Eleusinian mysteries and the Semithrasian mysteries and all of that. And I'm not even claiming a direct line of initiation here, but I am saying a descent of ideas that is our Western, that is our cultural practice. And it is spiritual alchemy. It is inner work. It is theurgy. It is designed to take the raw material, spiritual alchemy. It's the raw material of your soul, the base lead, basically crap, and pulling gold out of it, slowly and surely, through one initiation after the other, through study, through personal work, group work, moving yourself up through the grave and through the offices of the temple, and finally achieving and finding that inner gold. Whereas the grimoire work is, and this is why I stick to my guns on referring to it as a form of shamanism. It is a form of connecting with nature. It is a raw and visceral connection with the spirits that are in charge of making the world grow, basically.
Right.
So it's really it's two halves of one coin. The grimoires say that you shouldn't even attempt their work until you've attained the rank or degree of exorcist. And what they're talking about is back in the time when that was written, exorcist was an order in the church. It was something you had to be trained for and ordained for, and they would hand you the book of rituals, and they would hand you the tools, and you would go and be an exorcist.
Right, so you were initiated into that order.
Basically, and what the text is saying by that simple line, that you should hold that rank or degree, they're saying that don't come at this as a layman. You have to have some spiritual work. You have to have some advancement. When the spirits say, "Who are you?" you better have a damn good answer. And a lot of people miss that. And then here in the West, your best bet, unless you want to go join the church and become an exorcist, I think they're about to reestablish the order of exorcists. But an option you have available is to go through something like the Golden Dawn or
the O.T.O.
Suppose the O.T.O. or whatever. These lodge systems, that's what they're for. They are for your spiritual advancement. So that's my answer on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I answer that one too?
Oh, absolutely, Rufus. Yeah.
Okay. So in the O.T.O., you go through these. There's the public degrees, and then there's the private degrees. And in the public degrees, every man, woman, and child has a right to up to the 3rd degree, and then up to the 4th degree in the O.T.O. system. And as you go along, you go through all these initiations. But once you get past 4th degree, and you get invited to the KEW, which is the Knight of the East and West. And at that degree, you're actually bestowed the opportunity or the option to be ordained a priest in the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica. So it goes back to what Aaron's talking about, that you actually do get a priestly initiation at that point, an ordination where you're given, like he said, the tools to do the exorcisms and accomplish those things. Now, I think it should be noted that I don't know about Aaron, but I, for one, jumped right into Goetia long before getting that ordination from any organized group or anything with a lineage that goes back to Peter's throne or anything. Although the O.T.O. and the EGC does have a lineage that can be traced back to there with a little bit of, hoop jumping. But
someone messaged me, 3 or 4 days ago saying, I don't know what route to go. And I said, well, what do you mean by route? And he literally said, I don't know if I should go the Lodge magic route or the Grimoiric route. And it sounds like both of you are saying that is just a complete false dichotomy. It's divorcing something that really doesn't need to be divorced. Would that be accurate, Aaron and Rufus?
Well, let me give you just a little bit of history here. When the Golden Dawn was opened, and they first began working their way up through the order, I think it was Annie Horniman was the first person who was initiated into the second order. So there was a very long period before there even was a second order. It was actually kind of an afterthought they added on later. So what these guys were doing, and once I say this, it'll make a lot of what you read about Crowley and Mathers will suddenly make sense. They were working their way up to the outer order, which was and is considered a school primarily. You're just learning the Western mystery tradition, all the correspondences and all the terms and the languages and all that. When you go into the inner order, once you graduate from the outer order, there was no inner order to go into. That's where you're supposed to start using practical magic. And all of those adepts back then, the grimoires are what they were using. The outer order as a training program that would then allow them to use the Keys of Solomon and the Book of Abramelin. And that's why Mathers spent so much time translating those books. And that's why when Mathers and Crowley got into fights, they were using old grimoire methods and Abramelin squares tossing back and forth at each other.
Taff, taff, tarth, 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 tarth,
So, yeah, so it really is a false dichotomy. It's not an either-or scenario, obviously. I do both.
Yeah, you could say that the lodge work was like a shortcut to get the, or not a shortcut, it was actually a long cut, but it was an alternate method to get the authority that you need to actually conjure the spirits according to the grimoires.
Many years before I actually got my ordination, for many years I counted my 5e6 initiation into the RR at 8C as my ordination. That's when you gain, well, I mean, there's a little more work, but it's only after you go into 5-6 that you can gain the ability to be an initiating hierophant.
Right.
So that literally does make you a priest.
Do you, Aaron, do you also get the knowledge of conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel at that point, or is that 6 equals 5?
No, there's none of that in the Golden Dawn. There's none of that.
Seriously? But seriously. I mean, you did the Abramelin working.
Yes.
At what degree did you actually start doing that?
Before I joined the order, it was my guardian angel that told me to go to the temple. I'm not kidding.
Because they fuck with you the whole time. That's how they are.
I didn't want to join the Golden Dawn. I wanted to keep private. I'd already divorced myself from the local pagan community because it was a mess back in those days. This is in Orlando. And we had completely gone, my wife and I, or girlfriend at the time, but we had gone reclusive. And that's when we started hanging out with Oshani Lele and just learning everything we could from him. And then we just kind of, got this idea, hey, Chick Cicero lives within driving distance of us. Why have we not gone and said hi to this person? I was reading every book of his I could get my hands on. And so there was actually
into the Golden Dawn.
Everything they published, I was reading. But there's actually a funny story there. I don't know if you guys give a damn about this, but here's how I met Chick. There's a certain person whose name I'm just not going to say, and he was causing causing a wave in the occult community at the time because he had just trademarked the Golden Dawn name and symbols in Europe, and acting very quickly, Chick Cicero trademarked the same things here in America before this guy could do it. And this created a shitstorm, for lack of a better term. And a lot of people were saying that Chick Cicero was, evil, and the only reason to trademark that was because he intended to charge people money for it, and and keep the Golden Dawn all for his greedy little self. And then there were those who knew better and who were aware of the backstory, who were saying, no, this other guy is the one who was planning to do that, and Chick Cicero just, sidestepped him. He's actually going to protect us. He's already stated that he's going to let anyone use it if they're, as long as they're really doing the Golden Dawn, he'll give them a license and they can use the name. And by the way, he's held to that now for over 20 years.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Chick, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, and he deserves every bit of it too. Well, so I just happened to fall in the camp. I knew the backstory. I knew about what had gone on in Europe. So I was one of the people, God, this is on alt magic. I mean, this is ancient here. And not as ancient as Podsnet, but we're still talking about, when Ints were still sapling. And
that is best analogy ever. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. So I just happened to fall on the side of defending Chick Cicero, and I was a fan of his work. And I get this private email from someone named Maria saying, Chick wants to talk to you. Here's his number. Okay.
Wow.
And like I said, I had already kind of gotten this mindset that I really should contact this man. You know, I was going to contact Llewellyn or something. This is before I was a nobody back then. And so I called the number, and sure enough, it was his number, and I was very nervous, and he just completely quashed that immediately, just kind of took control of the conversation. It was just very friendly and personable. It ended up with me and a few of my friends going over to meet him, and just the ball got rolling from there. But that's the story of how I got involved and how I got to meet Chick after just being a nameless fan of his work.
I think it's important to remember that Chick makes his living making furniture, right? I mean,
he's retired from that now, but yeah, that's what he did for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he's a hands-on builder, and I think that his whole career has been hands-on building and practical approaches to things that aren't, these douchey astral initiations or, I mean, it's always been very solid and very, I mean, as far as working for an order that was destroyed by Aleister Crowley goes, I think that he's got a lot of things that are respectful and respectable about him.
I'll tell you what, it goes all the way back to the lineage, and this goes back to Rigardi. This is what I never got to meet Rigardi. He had already passed away by the time I joined. But my favorite story about him is where he first met Chick. And as the story goes, Chick contacted him and said, I'm building a vault here in Georgia, where he was at the time. I'd love you to come out here and consecrate it for us. Now, almost anybody in the Golden Dawn today, now you guys know this is true, almost anyone would have written him back and said, that's very cute. You're building yourself a little vault. And I'm sure you even think you got it right, but of course you understand that's not a real vault, and it doesn't have any real power. It has nothing. You're not really part of the Golden Dawn, but pat you on the head and you go on, keep up the good work. That's the response you would expect from one of these old Golden Dawn codgers, right?
Well, not Rigardi.
Rigardi wrote back and said, I hope you have an initiating team because I want you to put me through the 5-6.
Mm-hmm.
So he literally wrote back and said, well, literally, in essence, he said, you've built this toy? Holy shit, I want to come play in it.
Hey, Aaron, what year was that?
Oh, my dear God, that would have been, no, not even late 70s. No, that would have been late 70s. Because I think Rigardi consecrated the vault 2 years after Where a Raw closed theirs down.
Mm.
So there was only 2 years since 1880 that there was no active Golden Dawn.
So that's kind of interesting because my AA group that I belong to is it's founded through it goes back through Sora Merrill, who was Phyllis Seckler, and she did a lot of her work and development after Jane Wolfe, her superior in the order, and after Carl Germer died. She didn't have any supervisors within the AA, and so she contacted Rigardi, and they worked together for years to help her understand some of the AA initiations that were largely founded on the Golden Dawn tradition. So it's interesting that you go back to Rigardier and I go back to Rigardier by two different paths completely.
A lot of us go back to Rigardi through one path or another. We got a lot to thank that old man for.
For a lot of people on the outside, they're just names in a book, but you have that special connection, which is awesome.
Well, I think it's important to remember that, even though, I'm like this brilliant occultist who is all set to change the world for the better through the applied application of Hermetic principles. Even though I'm that wonderful person and Aaron's like not too shabby himself, I guess. But we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. None of us. I'm not as smart as Rigardi. I'm not nearly as smart as Crowley. I guess Mathers was all right, but none of us are doing anything. Jake Stratton Kent is this wonderful spearhead of the revival of the grimoire tradition or whatever, but it's not without actually reading all the stuff of all the people who've done all this work before us. We couldn't figure this out on our own. None of us.
I got to agree with that. It comes from a lot of study of what's come before. A lot of it is ferreting out what they got wrong. I'll admit that.
Or what we think they got wrong.
We think they got wrong, or we think they got right. But without Oshani Lele, without Chick and Tabitha Cicero, without Donald Michael Craig, this is just to name a few. I wouldn't, without Benjamin Rowe. There's a name you probably haven't heard in a long time.
Oh, come on. If it hadn't been for his Enochian stuff, you wouldn't even have written your stupid angelic linguistics thing.
No way. That book was a 10-year project, and it was not me. It was me and everyone else on what was called the Enochian L list, back when a group title had L on the end of it, because they were just mailing lists. And we hashed out, it was dozens of them, so we hashed out all that stuff. And I was just the one lucky enough to put it all in a book and collate it and get it out there through a decent distributor. But
yeah, you did really well considering how crappy the information was that you actually produced. But
yeah, right.
Other than that,
completely useless material. Don't buy any of it, guys. Don't buy any of it.
I'm hiding all of the books that I have from Aaron, and I'm hiding Rufus's book. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's all of it's just completely useless. This is great.
Oh, I've actually got Solomonic, the secrets of the magical grimoires. I've got that right here on my desk, and I give Aaron a lot of shit, and rightfully so. He's earned it over the years. But I mean, honestly, if you look at, for example, Chapter 7, the Purifications in Prayer that he wrote, this was one of the things that really helped me understand sort of the process of initiation to prepare yourself for doing magical conjurations. He's got the Solomonic 9-day purification. It goes into all these different things, and I think one of the most useful pieces that I've ever read that Aaron has produced is actually on page 217. It's under day 7, and if I may, I will go ahead and quote.
Oh yes.
Blah 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 blah. Horakio Asakro Bedrimulial blah 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 blah.
Honestly, some of his best work.
Oh boy. So, Aaron, do you have a copy of the Seven Spheres that you'd like to read from as well?
Watch him just say.
My mic because I'm dying over here.
Yeah. Well, the truth is he doesn't. We have strict orders with Nephilim Press never to sell anything to him.
What he doesn't understand is that was the incantation I wrote to make your house burn down.
We're gonna go there, are we?
That is a celestial.
You can't think you're ever gonna live that down. You really can't think you're ever gonna live that down, buddy.
I kind of don't want to. I would like to be a warning to everybody else.
He does that. He tells the good spirit, I want thousands of dollars by any means necessary. Who does that?
As long as nobody gets hurt. I said as long as nobody gets hurt. We weren't hurt.
No one got hurt.
Emotionally. I mean, it was a trauma. But hey, what's a little trauma on?
Hey, you're thelemic. That's what I make your ordeal severe.
Great. So now we have the authorities after this podcast are going to raid Aaron's house for goetic incense, and then your house is going to burn down, Rufus. This is just...
No, my house already burned down. Alex, did you not hear that one? I conjured Bune for like $4,000 because I had an electric bill problem. And Bune I was like, just by any means necessary as long as nobody gets hurt. And my house burned down, and my very first insurance check was for the amount that I asked for. So
whoa,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I did not know that. Talk about cosmic.
I thought that was legendary by now. I really did.
Yeah.
I publicly owned that one, and I have for years. And it is a cautionary tale. This stuff does work. It works exactly as you request it. So.
And one of the issues that I spoke with Aaron about first, and then Rufus, you and I were talking about it, is the element of actually one of the chapters in Aaron's book on shamanism and on devotional magic and on using very long incantations to attain some kind of altered state of consciousness, some kind of light trance state or state of ecstasy to help during a magical ritual.
You basically bore yourself into a state of hypnosis. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then do you both kind of see it that way in terms of an altered state of consciousness is completely essential, and the longer the better with the invocations, the better chance you have on attaining that state?
I mean, it depends on what you're doing. Just your basic consecrations and preparatory rituals, it's not so important. But if you're trying to have spirit communication, yeah, you're going to have to alter your consciousness to be able to hear and see them. Now the isolation, the boring yourself into the altered stage, that's really just one thing in the toolkit, really. I mean, you've got the vegetarian diet, you've got, and let's face it, they use drugs, they use mushrooms, there's actual records of magicians holding conjure parties, I guess. A bunch of people would actually come and witness him summon the spirits, and he would pass a bowl of liquid around to everybody they had to drink from before the ceremony started. So,
was that the Colosseum one?
I think it might have been, because that's what's popping into my head is that Colosseum one. And the guy writing the who wrote it up, who reported on it, was the one guy who refused the drink, and he's the one guy who didn't see anything. Okay, so there's and there's plenty of it. I cover a lot of it in Chapter 3 of Secrets, where there's a lot of evidence where they don't just come out and say it. Oh, and by the way, I've been talking. Are you guys familiar with Christopher Bennett?
Yes.
Advocate for entheogens, especially cannabis. I referenced him a lot, actually, in Secrets of the Grimoires, where it came to the ritual and sacred use of drugs through history. He is about to release a new book I'm kind of excited about, because he's been tracing the subject of drugs through Western occultism. Because one of the big questions people have is, if drugs were being used like in the Grimoires, if drugs were being used, why are they never mentioned?
Yes.
If you go back far enough, like the Picatrix, it's really talking about, take this severed head and pack it with 4 pounds of opium and then set it on fire, and then you'll see the spirits. Well, of course you're going to see the spirits, But that kind of dwindled and went away. And the drug war certainly wasn't going on in the medieval era, was it? And Christopher Bennett has actually gone back and researched, and by God, yes, it was. There was a drug war back then. There were actually declarations by various church leaders that the use of any kind of drug was devilish and evil, and it was outlawed.
Right, because there's only one way to God, and that was through the church.
Exactly. So there's as much reason for there not to be any mention of drugs in the Grimoires, but hints to it, as there is in something like, say, I Publish, where I take all the information about drugs and put it in one chapter and only talk about it as far as history goes, and then never mention it again in the practical sections. There's a reason for that, So there's a lot of hints that there was drug use going on. So that's one thing in the toolkit for altered consciousness. But going back to the subject of boring yourself in isolation, that was obviously a big one. Prayer, locking yourself in your room, not having any kind of outside stimulation. And it's the exact same thing that people are achieving today by really expensive sessions in isolation tanks.
Oh, yeah.
That expensive? I did one. I did the isolation tank thing. Yeah. And it was quite lovely. It's like this salt water that's so much salt that you actually float the whole time. And it's warm, and it's like body temperature, and they shut the door, and everything is completely black. And I totally did the, Liber Samic in my astral body as it's required and everything. And I had a wonderful time, but it was not any better than like sitting in my bathtub or sitting in a room, in an asana, or just sitting in a room stoned and doing it in the same way. I got to say that the sense deprivation tank technology that I experienced leaves something to be desired, because in the middle of, come now forth and follow me and, make all spirits subject unto me, I'm bumping up against the wall. So...
Well, see, and here's the problem, and I've never done a professional tank like that, and I'll tell you exactly why. It's too damn expensive. You can't just stay in there for a couple of hours and get the effect. You have to be in there for hours. If you look into the studies on sensory deprivation, and you can look up videos online of people actually doing this. Have you ever run into the YouTube channel called Vsauce?
No.
It's an awesome channel. This guy just comes up with these really wacky scientific questions and then explore. And like, what would happen if the Earth stopped spinning? And then they explore it, or what would And one time he decided to study sensory deprivation, and they locked him in a room, a completely white room with nothing in it except like a white mattress, and they left him in there for 3 days. And by the end of that time, he was fully hallucinating. He had no idea whether he was asleep or awake.
Yeah, I actually went through something like that for the AA that I can't really talk about in too much detail, but that's part of the whole process in this magical thing that we do. I mean, there has to be a point where you go through the shamanic death trip where you come back as something that's been exposed to the other world, where you're completely isolated from your daily activities and exposed entirely to the world of both your internal senses and the spiritual senses, where you're actually programmed and conditioned to see another reality.
Sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you think about it, just through the published material of the Golden Dawn, one of the most important ritual tools they use happens to be a 7-sided chamber with no light and a human-sized box in the center of it.
Right, and how long do they spend in there?
My record is 5 hours.
Chicken.
That's all I can say.
Coward.
That's all I can say. My record was 5 hours, and I think I had to get out I didn't have to get out. They had to come get me for something. I don't remember, but yeah, I was in there for 5 hours.
Yeah,
wow, that's incredible. And that actually leads to one of our first listener questions, which is when it comes to ceremonial magic, if you are, say, engaging in a Seven Spheres operation, or Aaron, if you're engaging with one of the grimoires, when it comes to achieving an altered state of consciousness, for both of you, is there a specific technique for actual grimoiric ritual magic that you find does the trick the best for you, that gets you in that frame of mind? Is it incantations? Is it entheogens? The Magus has that one section that someone just runs around in a circle until their head is dizzy. I mean, what are some of the techniques, if you're comfortable sharing, about what could help someone who's listening explore some of the best ways to achieve that altered state?
Okay, so my partner, I'm not going to say much about myself here, but my partner is, she comes from a fairy tradition, and she learned how to do aspecting, and has this she does a class on scrying and how to experience the spirits. And she uses things like rounded glass mirrors, lots of spheres, lots of reflective surfaces, candles in the background, things that alter what you're seeing in the moment. She starts with a ritual bath with hyssop and, chants some, actually she uses Lutheran hymns in the bathtub in the dark with just some candles and her in a tub with some hyssop. And she comes out and she wears all white and wraps her head in white and does this whole process of putting herself into a trance state, so that when we do the conjuration and I ask the spirits things, she responds with what she's sensing. And she talks a lot about using the whole body as a sensor and not expecting, pictures in the crystal ball, and not expecting voices spoken out loud that you hear with your ears, but understanding
way more than the 6 senses. Way more.
Yeah, exactly. Like thoughts that come in through your mind, or smells of herbs that you're not actually using in the right, those kind of things. And I've learned a lot about the whole scrying thing by being with my partner, and she's really good at that kind of thing. But for me, it was just learning how to differentiate my thoughts and where they come from in my brain from other experiences that are not coming from my brain. And that took hours and hours of meditation and contemplation and focus and paying attention to what was going on in my head. I think that that's all important, but at the end of the day, I would encourage listeners who are new to this and want to have more experiences with all this stuff to just, fucking relax and understand that the experiences come over time. And even if you do a ritual and there's no personal experience of the spirit, it doesn't mean that the spirit wasn't there. It just means you weren't paying attention to the right things. And you're going to learn it by doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's not until you've experienced it and built up those experiences that you actually are capable of sensing them and hearing them and communicating with them. You build a relationship and you build a knowledge base within yourself to understand what's going on during a ritual. Oh my God, the air suddenly feels really dense and heavy. Why is that? Is the spirit here? I guess so. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't smell anything, whatever. But, the air is more dense this time. And you do it again, and then next time the air gets dense and you smell a little like decaying substance in the background, and you're like, oh my God, I'm talking about Saturn rites, of course, and it builds up over time, and your experiences, you can't give up or think you're failing if you don't have some kind of wondrous vision of an angel that is 40 feet tall and holds you in the palm of his hand and puts you up in his eyeball and, all that crap. That's not going to happen 90% of the time, But yeah, it's important for people to understand that it's a process, and you gain the senses as you move on.
Aaron, too, do you find that? Do you find that that's in terms of one of the best ways to build up that sensitivity over time? Do you have any specific advice for the listener?
It's definitely something you build up over time. But you asked about what do we do? What processes do we follow? Mine are fairly similar, but they're basically the same thing, purifications that you see in the grimoires. So, I'll start with, of course, I always go vegetarian. Like, let's say I'm going to do an evocation on a given day, 7 days, maybe even 9 days beforehand, I'll stop eating meat. And that shifts your body chemistry, which shifts your brain chemistry. I will cut off, I won't be going out, I will cut off social contacts, I'll begin to shut down outside stimuli. That goes back to that sensory deprivation thing, spending as much time as possible alone. Ritual bathing, of course, is important. But what comes with all of this, and that's all important to shifting the consciousness, but the real thread that runs through it, and this is for me personally, because of the way my brain is wired. The Psalms and the prayers that you do during these purifications, that you have to, there's Psalms for the ritual bath, there's certain prayers you have to say at dawn, and then at noon, and then at dusk. And this goes on day after day, and it's... Frater Aro mentioned repetition. Even before the magic starts, you're repeating these prayers again and again and again and again. And the way my brain is wired, my spirits will tend to talk to me while I'm reading the conjurations and the invocations anyway. They'll start telling me things about what I'm reading and giving me ideas and pointing me in directions. So literally entrancing yourself with the endless repetition of these and that's why in the Key of Solomon these conjurations go on page after page after page, because it does lull you into that altered state where it's very easy for them to communicate with you.
Yes, I'm reminded of John Dee, right? Isn't that a very Dee-esquian kind of thing, where you are literally having these long, especially pre-operation prayers, where you're really getting in there and reciting for protection and assistance and all that?
To an extent. I mean, the way they worked, Kelly would sit at the table, not necessarily the holy table. That was something they constructed later. But whatever table he would sit at in front of the crystal ball. In John Dee's study, they were just in his office, in his personal library. And Dee had an oratory off to the side. It was a little side closet or room or something. And Dee would leave the room and go into his oratory and just stand there. And sometimes it was 15 minutes, sometimes it was half an hour, sometimes it was 45 minutes. But he would just sit in there and pray. And he didn't even really indicate that he took any grimoire with him or any specific prayer or conjuration. He would just go in there and pray and keep praying until Kelly would call in and go, I see something. And then Dee would come running out and start, writing down questions and answers, and recording the session. But so, yeah, it's not like he would spend hours in prayer to get the conjurations to happen, but he would continue the conjurations until something appeared. And there were times when it would go on for a long time. The scryer might sit there for, an hour and not see anything. But the spirits always say, persevere, don't give up, keep calling, until something shows up. And so that's how they work.
Yeah, and when you look at the history of like the Lemegatons Goetia, most of the spirits are also found in the Pseudomonarchia, and the Pseudomonarchia method of conjuration is it's oration. It's not a set of prayers that you have to say over and over again or anything. There is a script, but it's an oration unto the spirits. It's not when you get to Goetia, you've got like 3 or 4 different conjurations if the spirit doesn't show up. We're doing my partner and I are doing a conjuration at Noticon for the O.T.O, which is cool. We're doing this conjuration of a spirit as part of, we're doing a conjure track at the conference this year. And, when we were going through the Goetia that Aleister Crowley put together with the use of Mather's translations, and we cut out like half of those orations because they go on and 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 on. And the spirit we're conjuring is someone I've worked with for years. I don't have to do all that to get him to show up. I know he's going to show up after the first conjuration, and there's no point in going on and on and on. It's not necessary, especially after you've established a relationship. I mean, Aaron, don't you find that when you've worked with spirits for years and years, that when you go up to your talisman or your altar or your whatever you have that's dedicated to them, I mean, as soon as you call their name, don't they just show up and respond?
That's a thing that a lot of people miss about the grimoires. The grimoires do not present standard procedure. There's a reason they're called the Keys of Solomon. It's because they present the method of opening the door. Those rituals, those conjurations that go on and on and on, with all the heavy magic circle and the protection and the sword, and that's all intended for you to make first cold contact with spirits you've never met before. And you're calling them out of the ether, wherever in the quantum universe they reside. And
quantum universe, really? Really? Seriously? You're going to bring quantum into this conversation?
Well, you want me to just stick with D's ether?
Sure.
So but once you've contacted these spirits, once they've got a physical base, be it a brass vessel or a talisman or a ring or an icon, whatever it is, they'll have a physical object they're now bound to, and you can put that on an altar and give it offerings and speak to the spirit anytime you want without having to go through the 3-hour conjuration ceremony with all of its threats and everything else. Every time you want to talk to the spirit. My familiars that I got through the Abramelin system, they have an altar in the west of my temple, and I read Psalm 91 over with my guardian angel. I read that over at her altar, and then I walk over to my familiar's altar and sit down and just start talking to them. I call them by name, and that's it. There are no long conjurations involved for either my angel or for those familiars. But if I were to ask my angel for a talisman, one of those word squares, to achieve something that one of my familiars aren't really able to achieve, then I would get the word square and the name of the spirit who could do it. It would be a spirit I've never met before. And for that spirit, I would have to take the extra time to perform a conjuration and call it down and establish that first contact. And then once I've done that, and It's given me its promise to help me out and do the work for me. Now it's kind of part of the greater family. I don't have to do all that in order to contact that spirit. That's why the Book of Abramelin says just carry the symbol, and you don't even really need the symbol, and just state the spirit's name and what you want it to do, and it'll do. So that's
Aaron,
go ahead.
Have you ever tried just asking your holy guardian angel to put you in touch with them, bring them in, do an entire ritual entirely based on, doing your, I guess you do psalms over your holy guardian angel altar or whatever, but call the HGA and just ask them to put you in touch with the spirit. Have you ever done?
She is absolutely. I do nothing, no magical operation whatsoever without opening her altar first. She is the gatekeeper. She is the one that opens the way. She is the one that goes and brings the spirits that I need to me. Oh yeah, I do nothing without her. Without first, she gives me an okay to do it, and then she performs every ritual with me.
All right, so Alexander, you just heard him admit that his holy guardian angel is Yog-Sothoth.
Yes, I believe.
No,
I believe I heard that.
I didn't say she is the gate.
She is the gate. She is the key.
That's right. She's. I believe that's going to be the headline tomorrow. Is Aaron Leitch admits to Lovecraftian cosmic mythology in daily rituals. I think that's the key.
And DEA commences.
You guys are just. You're talking to a guy who's heard the piping, brother. I'm not kidding. Talk about the different ways people are wired, and my spirit will talk to me while I'm reading, but every once in a while I'll hear things. I'll hear music where there shouldn't be music, or I'll hear crashes and bangs when nothing has fallen over. And way back in my early days when I was performing a modified version of the opening by Watchtower every single day without a break, I actually heard the piping. I actually heard flute music coming from somewhere it couldn't possibly have been coming from. I have almost touched Azathoth.
We have a listener question from Janine, who Janine has asked, she wants to find out from both of you about that exact same thing regarding intermediate spirits or familiars. Janine is asking that, hey, can you please ask Aaron and Rufus about the spirits that you use to contact other spirits or familiars. There's obviously the HGA, the Lemegeton has, such and such bestows good familiars, but if you're just starting out in Solomonic magic or in any kind of grimoiric-based or hermetic magical system, can you share with Janine and others about spirits that help bring other spirits to the magician? Is that the best place to start, is to find a spirit that you can develop a relationship with? Rufus, why don't we start with you? Is that something that you think is probably the best way to start?
That is the model of the Greek magical papyri. The first ritual you're supposed to do is to get a supernatural assistant who can feed the spirits that you call and set out a table that is enticing to them, and who has a relationship with all the different various spirits that you're going to actually want to talk to. It is the key. I think what we were talking about earlier about getting ordained and being, blessed by the church and given the tools of the exorcist, obtaining that power, I think, can be done through the obtaining of the supernatural assistant. Your personal genius, your holy guardian angel. That is your key to the rest of the spirits. If you haven't conjured a spirit, they can introduce you. They can make short the way between you and them, so that when you call upon the spirit, it appears in the crystal or whatever. I think that is the first thing you should do, and that's been my position for many years. But I know many people who jump right into the Goetia without worrying about the holy guardian angel, or looking at their natal chart and getting their personal genius or the angel of the, what's it called, Aaron? The Notaricon or something? The notary art? The Pauline art.
That's the angel of your rising sign. Yeah, that's one patron that you have available.
One of the first things I saw on the Solomonic group was this woman was living in the middle of nowhere in Australia, and she was actually doing the Pauline art from scratch, including like all these brass talismans that she made out of leftover jewelry on her grill with a blowtorch. I mean, that was one of the things that actually made me feel like if a woman in the middle of nowhere in Australia can do these ancient grimoire arts to spec, so can I, and get the kind of results that she was getting. But yeah, Erin,
Kathy, she's a hell of a story.
Kathy McDonald.
McDonald.
Yeah,
Yep.
I remember her a lot. I saw her a couple of years ago, but haven't seen her lately.
She's still on Facebook. She's in the Solomon group. I think she's one of the admins.
Is she? Well, I'm
Yeah.
not surprised. You make everybody an admin. Pretty sure I'm an admin.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to make worthwhile people admins. So
Well, somehow I ended up on the list. I must have gotten under the radar.
I'll have to check.
Well, and Aaron, do you also find that too about what is the best way to approach to getting an intermediate spirit or a familiar?
What I need to talk about first, and it's really the same thing that Rufus was just talking about with that supernatural assistant. That's not really a familiar spirit. That's not it's not like what you would put in a ganga or a pot, off to keep on your porch. What's really important here, yes, intermediary spirits are absolutely important, but there's a first step before that, and that's your head spirit. And the supernatural assistant, I think, is a little more akin to a head spirit. The Holy Guardian Angel is definitely a head spirit. This is something we've kind of lost in the West. But if you go to the African traditions, that's number one. You have to get that spirit put to your head, and that's how you become a priest in the tradition. Once the spirit is in your head, you now have this entity living. It's a permanent possession. You have this entity living in you. It's bonded with you. The two of you become one, and that becomes your source of spiritual authority. When you command a spirit, that is the reason the spirit listens to you. Like I said, when the spirit says, "Who are you?" you better have a good answer. And this goes back to what I was just saying about I do nothing without my Holy Guardian Angel first. She okays it. She opens the gate for me. She performs the rituals with me. She ensures that they actually work because she is my head spirit.
Does she live in your head?
She lives in my head, absolutely. 100% permanent marriage. By the way, you hear people toss that term knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel around, and they really don't know what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Knowledge of the Holy Guardian Angel, the word knowledge is the same as in the biblical sense. Intimate knowledge. You are married. You are literally gaining a spirit. In the old tribal days, it was your spouse, that your patron was your spiritual wife or husband, depending on your gender. And this becomes your source of authority, your source of power. This is why when you speak, the spirits listen. Why when you cast your spells, they actually work. And like I said, she does open the gates. There's two types of intermediary spirit, though. One, they're usually solar or mercurial. Your solar ones are like the Holy Guardian Angel or the supernatural assistant. They are called divine regents. They can get between here and the spirit world because they have the diplomatic authority to do so. They can walk right into God's court and say, this is what this person needs, and argue in favor right there in the divine court.
Right, that's what Tiferet is all about, right? And that's the solar spirit.
Well, in the Golden Dawn, though, that's your higher and divine genius. It's a whole separate subject from a guardian angel.
It's the same thing.
No. See, the higher and divine genius is you. If you go up the worlds, up the four worlds, into Yetzirah and into Bria, you're going to hit you become the higher and divine genius. It is the part of you that lives in heaven and is waiting on your return. The guardian angel is an external entity who descends. It's the Redeemer. He's the one who comes down and reminds you who you are and that you do have a home to go back to and leads you back. So they're two entirely separate entities.
Right, but that's a liturgical aspect of it, right? I mean, the supernatural assistant that you get from the Greek magical papyri is not there to guide you back up to. No,
it's a different subject than Abramelech's Holy Guardian Angel. Yeah, but I think it operates more like a head spirit than a familiar. You don't send the supernatural assistant on just petty little tasks. This is something that opens the gates and brings other powerful spirits. It has the authority to bring these other powerful spirits to you.
Well, and then, Aaron, to Rufus's point, you mentioned there's the solar kind, but then there's also the mercurial kind, and I'm looking on the esoteric archives right now. Like, even if you look in, like, the Heptameron, it says that the mercurial spirits of Wednesday their office is to bind or loose spirits. So can you talk about the mercurial aspect of that, too?
Yes, the mercurial spirits are usually your trickster entities. Like Lucero in the African traditions, or Elegua in Santeria. And you get a Loki in the Norse tradition. And these trickster entities know the paths between here, and they know all the back roads. They know all the ways to slip in around the gates. And so that's their... And of course, being mercurial, they are in charge of communication. They are in charge of magic in general. They're in charge of divination. They're in charge of transportation. So they're literally the ones, with that whole connection between Mercury, angel means messenger. Their whole job is to pass back and forth between the spirit realm and the physical realm. So if you want to perform magic, you need one of these entities, whether you're going to go with the trickster type, and often they'll be more like familiars. They're not usually the big regal solar who can just waltz into the divine court whenever they want. They are a little more sly and I almost want to say subversive, especially in their trickster, when they're really doing the trickster thing. One of the two you're going to have to access, because they're the ones that are going to carry your message through to the other side. Otherwise, you're just kind of screaming with the wind.
Okay, and then Rufus too, and Aaron, this is something you just touched on, but Rufus, you mentioned the magical papyri. I believe Dr. Skinner mentioned in a recent interview about evocatory scrying, and you're supposed to, in one of the papyri, evoke Boel, who is supposed to help you as a spirit to help with actual engagement during scrying. And I think Dr. Skinner said you can stare at a candle flame for hours and nothing will happen. You can gaze in, dark waters and nothing will happen. But to Aaron's point, Rufus, it sounds like if you don't have that Boelian spirit or a solar or a mercurial, not much is going to happen, likely, at least at the beginning. Would that be fair?
I would not go there. I would not say that.
Okay.
Honestly, I've spent hours scrying into a candle and dark waters, and in fact, things have happened. But I didn't get it. I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any instruction that I was receiving from my holy guardian angel. I didn't have that spiritual guidance to contribute to my great work, my magnum opus. I didn't have anything to make that meaningful. So yeah, things happened. I had poltergeist activity show up one night when I was just looking at a candle that was completely freaking me out, and I had to do a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, to
kind of the tech that works.
Right, shut up. Just because it works doesn't mean it's cool. So yeah, this was when I was 18 or so. But this kind of thing, I disagree entirely with Dr. Skinner on that. You do have experiences, but they're just, I think what that spirit does is it organizes it and structures it in a meaningful way so that the experiences that you have are actually going to contribute to your overall great work throughout your life. It keeps things on track and makes it meaningful rather than just random noise. You can turn on a cathode ray TV with a ancient, oh my god, I can't even use this technology anymore because nobody is going to know what I'm talking about. Flat screens don't have antennas. You don't get static on a flat screen. But you can tune into static on a radio and hear weird things happening, and it's all the cosmic radiation from the background, and some of it might be some kind of alien signal. And you might find patterns, and you might find this or that and the other, magnetic resonances. But it's not meaningful to you unless you have some kind of translator. And that's what I think the the Holy Guardian Angel, Solar, Mercurial, whatever spirit, the ones that you work with the most are going to help you translate it.
Something, Aaron, that you mentioned during our podcast that I don't know why I thought of this like a month later, but one of the things you mentioned, and I wish I would have asked you at the time, is you said that when it comes to the Holy Guardian Angel operation, you mentioned that it's obviously something that shouldn't be done lightly, but you said that it shouldn't really be done unless your back is up against the wall and you're all out of options and you really need something big to happen. And you mentioned your own experience where you were really there. When you say that, do you mean, and Rufus, I'd like to get your take on this afterwards, but Aaron, when you say that, do you mean that the HGA operation should be undertaken as one of the very first things that one might do, or is it something that should only be reserved if you're in a very, heavy situation?
Oh, that's really not easy to answer, because that's going to be a case-by-case situation. I mean, I didn't start with Abramelin. I had the benefit of going through Don Craig's lessons and reading everything the Ciceros had to publish, and long talks with Oshani Lele as I began to try to make sense of the grimoires themselves. I had a lot of background. I think that was important for me. Right. However, and I think I said this last time we talked, the Book of Abramelin does not present itself as something that only an advanced magician should be trying. It was written by Abraham, the Jew, for his son Lamech, who was the second born in his family. He had an older son to whom, by birthright, he had given the Kabbalah. And so, as I guess kind of a consolation prize for that, he wrote the Book of the Sacred Magic, or I guess he didn't write it, Abramelin wrote it, but he wrote some commentary for it and gave the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage to Lamech. And it was presented to him as, this is how you do it. This is how you start. These are the steps you take. So it literally was intended for a beginner.
Okay.
But so, it's going to have to be each person. And what I really meant about with your back being against the wall, and it has to be the last option, is that it has to come from a calling. You have to feel motivated by this, that this is not only somewhere you want to go, but somewhere you have to go, that your back is against the wall. You've gotten as far as you can get in the things that you're studying and doing, and this has to be the next step that deep down that you have to take. And in my particular case, there was a lot of emotion with that, and I've dealt with depression and worse, through my lifetime. And so when I got to that point, and I was only like 23, I think, in 97, and I was at an emotional, I was, emotionally against the wall, where, everything in my life had kind of culminated, everything in my childhood, I should say, and in my teen years had culminated right then and there. And this is where I had to go. And if this didn't work, I had no other plans.
You felt it deep within you, like you had to do this.
Yes, and like I said, I never wanted to join the Golden Dawn, so I wasn't looking at that as an option. And I had already given up on the local pagan community. I mentioned that earlier, so that wasn't an option.
Wow, 23, huh?
Yep, 23. I did it a little bit early. So yeah, and in essence, what I'm saying is, don't do this because, this looks cool. I think I can do this and summon my guardian angel. And then, you think it's an evocation ceremony, then you can put it away and been there, done that, and you go on. And that's not what this is about. This is a lifestyle choice. You're going to be doing this system for the rest of your life until you die. And on the day of your death, it's your holy guardian angel who's going to be standing in front of you to take you wherever the hell you're going. So, don't ever do anything like this lightly.
Rufus, did you also find that, like Aaron was saying, where it was a situation where if you did not do it, you pretty much would feel like you're neglecting a karmic or a spiritual aspect of yourself that you would always regret, basically?
All right, so yes, I would say that I totally agree. Aaron used the key word that resonates with me, a calling. If this is the life that you're going to live, you're going to live it, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to need it, and you're going to need I wouldn't say you have to have your back against the wall, but I understand what he means by that. You know, he's trying to say that you have to feel like you have no other option than to do this, or else you will never have that satisfaction. You know, that fulfillment of will and love under will that is perpetual happiness, as they put it in the Mass at the Cool Lodge. But seriously, this whole thing that we're talking about is, you know, magic and the occult and the grimoires and conjuring spirits, and, you know, Aaron said earlier, you know, these spirits of the Goetia, for example, are these spirits of nature. You know, when my partner and I, Harper, conjured one of the dukes of the Megaton's Goetia, you know, we asked what the purpose was, and it said, you know, we're basically the intelligences of the spirits of nature that make things manifest. And it explained it in very clean and concise ways that made perfect sense. You know, if you're actually a person that's called to interact with these spirits, you're going to find yourself in a place where you're completely empty and alone and betrayed by other people, and you realize that all the stuff you've studied over the years is the thing that is your key, you know, to getting out of all this stuff. And you will conjure your holy guardian angel or whatever. You'll pursue your initiations, and it will manifest for you. But like Aaron says, the people who take it lightly and think it's just a box on a checklist to go through, this isn't a procedural set of stuff. You know, it's a specific set of guidelines for those of us who are called to this, you know. And I think that calling is what empowers us, rather than, you know, this borrowing of power thing that you do with or some people say that you do with, you know, reciting all the names of God when you conjure a spirit. It's not that as much as it is recognizing that you have that authority. And like Aaron says, when the spirits ask, who are you? You know, having that answer, I'm someone that was called to this shit, motherfucker. You know, this wasn't my idea. I didn't, you know, get born and plan on being some kind of spirit conjuring magician. It just sort of turned out that that's what I am. You know, mm-hmm. So the whole thing with the seven spheres and the hermetics and the whole applied hermetics thing that I want to do with my life, you know, the message I want to get out to people, that hermetics works to actually change your life and make it better. You know, explain who you are and why you're here and what you're supposed to do while you're here. I want to tell everybody about that, but the only people that are going to hear it and listen to it and understand it and apply it and have it be effective for them are going to be those who are called to the path that I'm interested in. You know, and this calling thing is kind of a big deal. You know, being the chosen people. It matters a lot.
Rufus, I do have a quick question for you, though. Aaron told me that during the Abramelin operation, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the songs that kind of reminds him of the time he was doing that was Counting Crows, A Long December. When you are in your most, you know, spiritually, you know, engaged moments, not a specific moment, but just, you know, over months, or is there a certain song that kind of can remind you of a certain magical engagement you were in, or a certain kind of period in your life that you can recall to memory to remind you of where you've been and where you're going?
This is going to sound stupid, but yeah, Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel.
God, yes. Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Why is that? Why is that song obviously very well known?
It will be a song about a holy guardian angel coming to get somebody. I mean, that song is just awesome.
The culmination of it is "I'm coming home," mm-hmm. You know, and that's exactly what this is like.
Take me home.
Yeah.
Wow,
that song was important to me too. So I'm totally with you on that one, brother.
That is.
God damn it, Aaron! Fucking A.
Yeah, I know. Everything you do, I do better. I know.
No, you don't though. You don't.
Actually, if you go to my, if you
do
look,
it too.
If you look me up on YouTube, and I think on YouTube I'm Kef777. I have a playlist, and I think it's called Holy Guardian Angel, and it's all the songs that were important to me through that period. And Salisbury Hill is in there. Mm-hmm. I think Long December is in there. Smashing Pumpkins, Tonight is in there. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, but no Kansas.
There might be Kansas in there. I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
No kidding. I think I'm going to have to look at this right after the podcast. I'm going to have to check out the playlist.
Yeah, I'll just play that whole, when I'm wanting to hype myself up into that state of mind, I'll listen to that playlist because, yeah, it's pretty powerful.
By the way, Rufus, this is a question for you and Aaron, although Aaron mentioned this in Secrets of the Solomonic Grimoires. Aaron had a chapter of when you're doing a magical working, sometimes, for instance, you could put on, like Latin chants in the background and kind of music that actually during a magical working can actually heighten the experience. Do you, Rufus, and Aaron, of course, please feel free to jump in after, but Rufus, do you, when you're engaged in some kind of magical ritual, whether it's the Lemegeton, Seven Spheres, your own workings, does music play a role for you when you're doing that?
All Tool, all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
All Tool, all the time. Very nice.
Tool is very good for some workings, as long as you're into that whole industrial thing.
Mars working.
Mars, okay. I was thinking about Saturn, but yeah, that too.
Yeah, I go for more dirge, more death, not death metal, but more depressing type stuff for Saturn.
Yeah. Well, actually, for the music that I go to for ritual, it's these Tibetan singing bowls by Durden or something.
Yeah,
I could probably look it up on my phone. But it's just basic, this vibration in the background that you can mystically tune through your ritual rites and your spiritual acumen to the sphere of the entity that you're conjuring. Even in the EGC, when we do a mass, I'm usually the priest. Well, I'm always the priest, or the deacon, or a child. But anyway, when we participate in a mass where I'm actually the priest of the thing, we tend to do this Tibetan bowl thing. And whether you're doing a mass in the O.T.O. or a conjuration of a demon, or conjuration of the angels of the seven spheres, the archangel of the planet, this basic creation of a vibration in the background that is neutral and at the same time powerful is really useful. That's been my experience.
We do have two questions from Frater Ashen Chassan.
Ashen Hassan.
Yes. I mentioned to Brian that I would be have the honor of speaking with you both, and he wanted me to ask you two questions. So
if I know him, they're completely snide and sarcastic, aren't they?
A little bit stupid. I mean,
well, you.
Oh, hey now.
No, I'm kidding.
Well,
Frater Sean, we love you, right? Yeah.
I love you, Brian. Really good whiskey.
Frater Chassan asks, please ask Aaron and Rufus what their overall goal or ultimate goal of magic or evocation is. Where do Aaron and Rufus see that goal headed, if anywhere? And Aaron, you want to give it, or Rufus, whoever wants to go first.
No, Aaron can go first, but I just want to say, that he's totally trying to validate something that he received from a recent conjuration.
Oh,
but go ahead, Aaron.
Everything is a validation of my conjurations.
You're a validation of your conjuration.
Pretty much. No, seriously though, the ultimate goal. First of all, you have to frame this right, because that question, I suspect, comes from. We kind of have an atmosphere in our culture of, hey, I need something. Here's a list of spirits. Let me find the one that can get it. Let me conjure them, and go from there. And then once I'm done conjuring them, I send them away, and I never talk to that spirit again. My conjure work is mainly focused on my guardian angel and my four familiars. That's where I do my day. That's where I'm doing most of my work. Only rarely do I work with a spirit that I don't know. So the goal is to establish these relationships with these spirits, lifelong, get to know them, train them to work with me. They train me to work with them. In that vein, they are the ones that teach me magic. They are the ones that show me how to make my spells work or how to fix conjurations to make them better. I've already said they open the gates. They are the ones that carry the message or the spell onto the other side and make it manifest. They are the goal. They're the ones that do the magic with me. So it's not just an endless series of conjurations where I hope someday to get something out of it. I'm getting it now. I've been getting it for years. And it's building these relationships, not just with my guardian angel and familiars, but with Yophiel, he was the second angel I ever conjured. Michael was the first. We've got an altar to Michael here too, so we work with him. Samael protects our house, and or actually his seraphim protect the house. So we feed and we work with and we develop relationships with these spirits, and because that's how you get through life. When bad stuff happens, you want these guys on your side, and you want them to know who you are and give a shit about what happens to you. So that's the reason. That's the whole goal.
Yeah. All right. Can I just jump in here?
Jump in.
All right. Cool. So, all right. What Aaron just said is key to this whole thing, and it's something that drives me nuts in our modern grimoire world. Like, people are jumping from grimoire to grimoire and from system to system, and every few years they get bored and they move on to another one, and it's like, okay, checked off the Black Dragon or Black Pullet, whatever. I've done the cross key stuff that Michael Cacciatelli wrote about. I've done this, I've done that, I've done okay now, and I got to keep moving on to the next system. And people look at me and they're like, are you seriously just going to use the 7 spheres for the rest of your life? That's what you are happy with? I'm like, yeah. I've done this work. I've established a foundation, and I'm continuing to build those relationships with those spirits. And, I don't write a lot more books because, I also have quite a few spirits from Lemegadon to Goetia that I work with regularly. But I also have some Solomonic stuff I do from the Greater Key. But it's primarily this 7 sphere stuff, and it's really simple, and it's really direct, and it's super effective. And this idea that you have to keep jumping from system to system to system, and you always have to be trying something new and getting new accoutrement. My magical library now includes all these books by Jake Stratton Kent and by David, we won't say his name, and all these other things. It doesn't actually make your life better. And the end goal, Aaron says, is to all right. So Aaron said it was to actually work with these spirits. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, and I've been wrong twice now so far this life. The point of working with these things is to create and manifest and maintain your life, and to continue to evolve these relationships with these spirits. And I think that is so true. And Aaron probably helped shape my perceptions on this stuff back in 2006. But it's been the most resonant and useful thing that I've learned from working with these entities is that it's not it's not a competition. You don't have to. It's not Pokemon. Let's collect every type of magic and have every grimoire that was ever published in the 15th century under our belt. And if you're doing that, I honestly question whether or not you're focusing on the value of the systems that we have available. And every system is effective in its own way. But I just wish that more people would work with one and develop those relationships and take care of themselves, take care of their lives.
If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in here with a real good observation. There was a certain person, who I would also like to not name if we can get away with it, who recently posted a video on YouTube explaining to the world how he has, and I quote, maxed out the voodoo system as if this is a thing that you can work your way through and get to the end of, rather than a religion that you practice for the rest of your life. He has maxed it out. And since he had maxed it out, he decided it was time to take all of his altars and fetishes and tear them down and put them in a cardboard box and stick it in his closet. And then purify his temple and kick all the Loa out and go on to something else. And that is such a perfect example of not getting it.
Yeah.
And I'm using him because it's a humorous example, and a lot of people are going to recognize what I'm talking about. But you know what? On a smaller level, that's what people are doing when they do what Rufus was just describing. Well, I've done Abramelin now. Time to go on to the Kia Song. Well, I've done that now. Now it's time to go on. I've done the Golden Dawn. Now it's time to move on to something else. Anytime you think you've maxed out a system, then you've just proven you don't get it. And if you only work through it to a certain extent and then leave it and go on to something else, you are missing everything that would have come after. I've been in the Golden Dawn 20 years, and I'm still learning things about the system that I would not have learned if I had just reached 5-6 and said, hey, thanks, that's what I wanted, and I'm out of here, and left.
Okay, but seriously, wait, you also left paganism after, I assume you made it to third degree, in some kind of witchcraft tradition, and you were like, oh, never mind, and then you went on to something else. So at some point...
I was never initiated with it.
Really?
Yeah, I never took it. My wife did, and she went to third degree, and I just stayed outer court, and I ended up going into the Golden Dawn.
Well, all right, so that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes you start a system and you work with it for a while and you feel like, oh my God, this is it for you. But then you realize, oh, actually, no, this is not actually bringing me new information, further evolution, or enlightenment. And there's also times when you conjure, like I know people who conjure from the Lemegatons Goetia and have zero zilch responses for years. And they're like, dear Mr. Opus, please explain why I don't get the results that you get. And I'm like, because it's not your system. It's not for you, Jen. This isn't your thing. It's not going to work for you. Find something else.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you have to stick with a system that you feel isn't doing anything for you. But having left Wicca, outer court or not, having left Wicca, I don't now run around telling everybody else what it's about and pretending that I'm an expert with 30 years experience in Wicca when I only had maybe, 10.
Oh, are you talking about someone we know?
No. Well, I mean, there's plenty of people who that shoe would fit, but I'm not actually pointing to anybody. But no,
one person.
But what I'm saying is you can't think that you understand a system when you're not willing to work it all the way through, and you're just hopping from one thing to the other.
Right, based on what's being taught.
None of these things can be maxed out. The O.T.O can't be maxed out. The Golden Dawn can't be maxed out. Thelema can't be maxed out. So yeah, this stuff takes a lifetime, and when you do find the thing that you're called to, you have to dedicate it to it and take it all the way.
Right, but it's also really comfortable. It's not a hard choice to make. I mean, when you find what you're actually...
Screaming if it has to be,
What's that?
Yeah. I said, comfortable or not, if it's your calling, you'll be drug kicking and screaming if God's has to drag you there.
That's true, but you have to be really stubborn. I don't know. I'm going to shut up.
No, that's actually a fantastic point. And actually, I'm curious about the opposite of what you both are touching on, because you brought up great points, and I'm sure you know way more people than I do like this, but I know people who go the opposite way, where it's like the jack of all trades, where instead of, say, leaving Wicca, they are a Solomonic practitioner, they're a member of Wicca, oh, they're also a Gnostic priest, oh, they're also a Mason, oh, they're also in the Golden Dawn, oh, they're also this and that and that. And do you think that carries its own risk, where people almost are trying to collect as many membership cards as they can?
Well, as somebody who still attends Wiccan festivals, who is an ordained Gnostic priest, who is a member of the Golden Dawn, and a practitioner of Solomonic magic, I got to say, I think you can do those things.
It's fine.
But Here's the thing, though. I'm eclectic in that sense.
Yes.
But I'm not eclectic in the sense that I'm a Solomonic Golden Dawn Wiccan. You know what I'm saying? I don't hyphenate it all. I'm not trying to make a Solomonic Golden Dawn or a Golden Dawn Solomonic system, or
Exactly.
I'm not trying to mix and match. Each system I explore that calls to me, I give it its own due attention, and I follow its path, and I learn its mysteries. And I'm not saying they don't affect each other. I mean, I use the Kabbalistic cross in my Solomonic work all the time. But I don't use the pentagram and hexagram rituals in my Solomonic work. It's just not part of the system. And I don't mix and match. So you can explore more than one thing. I mean, I love it. I love exploring all these different ways. But I'm not jumping from one to the other. Oh, been there, done that, moving on. Been there, done that, moving on. No.
Right.
And like Rufus said, and I wanted to add this in, I'm sorry to interrupt Rufus, but I wanted to add this in because you talked about people giving you a hard time about, are you just going to stick with that one book for the rest of your life? And I get the same thing from people who are asking me about these different grimoires, and I'm like, look, I don't use that grimoire. I don't use that grimoire. What do you use? I use the Book of Abramelin. That's it? Yeah, I mean, you know, I use the Key of Solomon. I use that to consecrate my tools and stuff, especially for my shop. And I use the Heptameron for some things, and I draw things from here and there. But my Solomonic practice isn't linked to any one grimoire. It's just a general Solomonic practice. And my one go-to book, the one system that I follow religiously, is the Book of Abramelin. And I don't have any need to go to any other grimoire or contact spirits I don't know, because my four familiars, my guardian angel, and some also outer lying spirits that are involved, they can do everything I need. So it's better for me to dedicate my life to building a relationship with these guys rather than surfing off to something else just because I see something shiny and glittering.
Okay, so Aaron, what is the point of dedicating your life to getting to know these guys? What's your end game? What do you get out of dedicating your life to that? What you just said.
Just as we said, these are the guys that make your life possible and stuff. You know, when they're the ones that protect you, they're the ones that, you know, like I said, they have a reason to care about you. The longer you know them and the longer you work with them, they have a reason to care. You know, I'll tell you something that I don't really say publicly much, but the Archangel Yophiel had a direct involvement in the birth of my daughter. On a medical level. My daughter should not exist. But something happened during a ritual that we were doing at the Golden Dawn, by the way. It wasn't even a Solomonic ritual. And something happened with Yophiel there, and I'll go silent on the specifics. But about 10 months later, my daughter came along, and we knew exactly what had happened.
That's
so. This angel has a direct. I mean, he's literally my daughter's godfather. I mean, you know, not even in the ritual sense. You know, she has an earthly godfather, but this is my daughter's godfather, and he cares about her, and he will watch over her, and he will see that she is successful, and that's the goal. That's the goal, is to make it through life, to be protected from what is bad and to enjoy what is good. And it's not going to stop every bad thing in the universe from happening to you, but when bad things happen, you want these guys on your side.
Great.
You need to have a relationship. You need to be on, like you said, you need to be able to sit down at their altar or shelf or wherever, shrine, whatever, and just say, hey, Yophiel, I brought you some oil, I brought you some bread and honey and water and stuff, and here's the candle, and I'd like to talk, and here's my problems, and here's what I'm praying for, and then you see stuff happen.
Right, guys, a little help.
or he might respond, well, if you want that to happen, here's the ritual, and there's that secondary reason I mentioned before. They teach me my magic. They are the source of my magic. The books, the grimoires, that's all beginner stuff. That's all opening the door. The spirits will teach you the magic. So that's your end goal, is to have them as your teachers, your guides, and your protectors through life, because why the hell not? Why the hell would you not? You know? So that's I'll end it there, but that's my answer to that.
Well, interesting point of overlap here. I also have a child that came about as a direct intervention of some spiritual forces. So.
Oh yeah, of course you'd say that.
No, I'm not. You know what? Honestly, no. Actually, my ex-wife was having a miscarriage, and we called a spiritual practitioner, and the spiritual practitioner used some hoodoo magic, and the miscarriage stopped miraculously, like while I was on the phone with him. And it was entirely by reciting one verse from Exodus. And, I mean, just for the record, this stuff really matters. It really does have an effect.
And I bet saying that one verse was instructed by a spirit.
Well, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. The guy was a funny
Ultimately.
Christian, so whatever. But
Well,
I don't know. All I know is I'm glad my kid's here. And, this whole thing, I don't know. It's weird how much Aaron and I have in common. It's kind of
scary.
Yeah, disconcerting.
Hey, by the way, you know what? This episode is historic because it's going to quash a long-standing rumor that me and Aro are the same person.
are you kidding me? Really? That's a thing?
Dude,
That
I'm
is a
so
thing.
sorry that anybody ever suspected you of being me. I mean, don't they see that you're
hilarious.
don't they see that you're smart? I mean, come on now.
Hey, there will be some who say that this is just one person talking. We're just using a voice modulator.
Well, you do sound modulated, but that's because you're flat-toned and boring. And it's not your
Exactly.
fault.
Exactly. I'm
That's
a
how you
golden
manifest
daughter.
it.
What can you say?
I know, my
fun.
God. Can we just talk about a thing real quick?
Of course.
How about the Golden Dawn method of arguing online? You guys all argue the same frickin' way. It's always, not only are you stupid, but you are also unenlightened and unilluminated. And then you argue against every point without ever mentioning what was actually said in the first argument. You never address what was actually said. Do you get, like, the straw man's guide to arguing by the Golden Dawn? Did Mathers write that? I would like to seriously know, because this annoys the fuck out of me on a regular basis.
Here's the secret. most of those guys aren't in the Golden Dawn.
Oh, come on. You are too.
It's true. It's true.
Aaron, I'm
No.
talking about you.
But but for those of us who are, we're just we don't suffer fools easily. That's like some guy accused me of being a liberal the other day. He said, "Hey, when I was supporting Trump, Aaron's a liberal, and he didn't kick me off his page." And I wrote back and I said, "I'm not a liberal." And he said, "Well, I saw you bashing Trump supporters," and I'm like, "I just bash stupid." On both sides of the aisle, I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I don't fit any of those preconceived molds.
Right.
And we're all like that.
From me.
We're all like that. We'll just tell you what we think.
Which is,
and if we think you're an idiot, we'll tell you you're an idiot. I tell you all the time, don't I?
well, you have on occasion. However, I would just like to point out the fact that you are a long-haired hippie liberal, and
Yeah, I'm.
that label or not is up to you, but everybody knows.
Quite often.
Well, actually, nothing unites two people than having a common target, and I do have Frater Chassan's second question for you both, if you would like. So, Frater Chassan, and we've had bits of humor here, but he got really, really serious for this question. He said, please ask both Aaron and Rufus, possibly, why did the gods choose him, meaning Frater Chassan, out of all three of you to make him the best conjurer and the best looking person? It seems rather odd. That is a direct quote from Frater Chassan, so feel free if you'd like to respond.
That's a perfect example of what happens when you think you're talking to a spirit, but you're just talking to your damn self.
Goddamn straight. Honestly, have you seen him? I mean, he's got Facebook pictures of himself as ninja and as fully dressed armored knight from, frickin' Excalibur.
That face could launch 1,000 ships the other way.
Oh, touche.
He's a great dude. We love him and respect his work. It was, he worked really hard on it, and
He did.
it's
And put up with a lot of people yelling and screaming at him, too.
right. And I know the details of him actually putting together Through Gateways, and I that dude is super devoted to his craft, and I'm not gonna ever talk shit about his dedication to the work. He's definitely dedicated. Kind of stupid, but other than that.
But you can disagree with his results all you want. He's putting in the time and he's doing the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and this.
What can I say past that?
Rufus, this is something that we discussed. Aaron, I'd love to get your perspective on this because Rufus and I in the last podcast were talking about both your work and Frater Chassan's work regarding Grimoiric Traditionalism, following through all of the steps. And to quote Rufus Opus, he said, quote, Frater Chassan is a stickler. I am not a stickler. And he was talking about and correct me if I'm wrong, Rufus, talking about how, yes, the craft is great and the work is great, but that's just one approach in terms of following all of the Grimoiric recommendations, all of the Grimoiric requirements. But then, Rufus, in your work, especially Seven Spheres, for someone on the outside, the reader gets an entirely different experience, which is you can go that route of Grimoiric traditionalism, but it's not required. And so can you and Aaron kind of talk about your different approaches? Because if you read Seven Spheres, you get one way of doing it, which is, there's electrodes hooked up to the sigils, and there's, you're using, the first time you conjured Gabriel was with a coffee mug with some ink in it, and then you read, Aaron's Secrets book where it's all about, hey, here are the steps to actually consecrate Magica Materia. So can you kind of talk about the differences there?
Sure, I was honest, and Aaron lies.
Well, the stuff that I teach works as opposed to Frater here.
As a matter of fact, I have gotten, let's compare notes sometime. That's all I'll say. I have so many people thanking me for doing that thing that I did. So, No, false. I call false.
So Rufus, you're saying that for someone like Frater Chassan or for Aaron, who's kind of, will have the Key of Solomon and will do every, the actual consecrations. I mean, Aaron just a couple months ago on Doc Solomon's page posted a video of him doing an actual consecration of Solomonic holy water and stuff like that. Are you saying with Seven Spheres that is obviously a very valid approach, but it sounds like there's not as much in your book, Seven Spheres, emphasis placed on, hey, you have to follow these kind of things.
Basically, I don't think that you have to do all that shit to be able to talk to the spirits. I believe that those of us, like we were talking about earlier, who are called to this kind of thing, have a touch point on the other side. And all of the consecrations and rituals and all that stuff, obviously it was published by people who were probably priests. They had a priestly background. There's this Neoplatonic Christian overlay on all of this. This is why it's okay to actually conjure demons. Even Agrippa came out against Goetia. It's not popular or approved under Christianity by any way, shape, or means. So they presented these publications using the trappings of liturgy and ritual that came from the Catholic Church, because the only people that could write back then were probably priests. And this is all stuff that I've seen Jake Stratton Kent theorize about publicly, and I happen to agree with him. I thought it sounded realistic, and it explained a lot, had a lot of explanatory force, so therefore it is a useful hypothesis. But, the whole thing is getting in touch with the spirits. Aaron argued that this whole Solomonic thing is a shamanic practice that is acceptable to Westerners, and I don't disagree. When the spirits have called you, you're answering them. You're answering them when you feel the urge to conjure a spirit. You're not actually. I don't think it's that there's any way to easily differentiate between being called by the spirits and deciding to call a spirit. I think that it's the same thing. If you feel the urge to conjure a spirit, chances are that spirit also wants to work with you and has called you and has summoned you every bit as much as you've summoned them. And that is sort of where I think all this stuff comes from and where it goes to. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is find the method and find the commonalities that actually work. That actually gets results. And Aaron, of course, the same question goes to you. I mean, obviously you have such a vast background as well. With different traditions, and just go over your Doc Solomon's page and you can see the meticulous effort you put into with the proper consecrations. I mean, Wednesdays must be exhausting for you during a waxing of a moon.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, it's just like you probably need like a vacation after that. So can you kind of talk about that where, just what Rufus was saying, it's kind of like, hey, find the method that works, and then you look at the different traditions and the different consecrations that you use. Can you talk about that in terms of, is following everything to the letter, is it one of those things that it's an absolute requirement, or it's a very positive thing, but there's some flexibility there? Can you talk, especially for readers who might not have read Secrets yet? Before you go on, Aaron, real quick, I'd like to just kind of clarify a little bit there. I'm not saying that my point was that if the spirits have called you, no matter how you conjure them, they're going to appear, and they're going to want to interact with you because we are called to this. So that would be the point that I would want you to respond to if it were up to me. No, absolutely. Thank you for the clarification, Rufus, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's several different ways I can come at this. First of all, let me get something. I'll address the elephant in the room. Where it comes to being meticulous, like Frater Ashen, okay? If
super meticulous.
Yes, and it's because he picked a grimoire to follow, the same way I picked the Book of Abramelin to follow. And so if you're going to pick a specific system to follow, then follow it. Don't create some kind of rehashed, dumbed down, simplified, stripped down version of what you think the system should look like because it's just easier. And we live in the 21st century, so we can't do it the way they did it, which, by the way, is bullshit.
But that's not why I did that.
No. Let me finish. I'm just getting that out of the way, because where it comes to being meticulous, like Frater Ashen is, if you are going to follow a particular system, a particular grimoire, and you're going to actually go out in the public or online and say, hey, I am an expert in the Lemegeton's Goetia, then yeah, you need to be that meticulous. You need to follow its rules, at least at first. You need to because like I said, these are beginners. This is just where you start. Follow its rules, and then the spirits will show up and tell you what you can change. Because from there, they're your teachers, and you can change anything. So let me get that out of the way, because other than Abramelin, I don't follow one particular book. And I mentioned this before. I just do general Solomonic magic. If you go into my blog and look up the different offering rituals I've done, those aren't drawn out of the Heptameron. They're not drawn out of the Key of Solomon. But they are still 100% Solomonic. They're structured the way Solomonic rituals are, and they use psalms and invocations to, the different names of God and the different angels.
But they're Leitchianisms.
Yeah, it's you put them all together and you get a new grimoire, the Leitch grimoire. And then other people will argue about whether they should meticulously follow those instructions. But you see, I'm not meticulously following one book's instructions. The point is, I know how the magic works.
Right, and your improvisations are always in keeping with
what I know works and what my spirits have told me to do and what works. Right. Now, I want to go on. I want to jump right into another thing, because this goes on to what you were wanting me to cover. Rufus, is that I made a statement online. You might remember this. It really sent everyone into a tizzy because they didn't get what I was saying at first. But I said that Solomonic magic isn't Solomonic magic. It's just magic.
Mm-hmm.
And what I meant by that was it was kind of meta. Of course, Solomonic magic, is the cultural trappings of biblical literature that's drawn from, and the reference to the prophets and the particular archangels, and this makes it Solomonic. It makes it this biblical kind of magic. But outside of that, the guys who are writing these books, They were out to learn magic from any and every source they could. They didn't care if it was Arabic, Christian, Jewish, the local, witch down at the end of the street. They didn't care.
Agrippa as a case in point.
As a wonderful case in point. And they want, and D too, by the way, and they didn't care where if you said cultural appropriation of one of those guys, they'd look at you like you had 3 heads, because it makes no sense in the whole context. Magic is magic. Solomonic magic is just magic. Those guys didn't care if it came from their culture, or if they were somehow being too eclectic, or if this thing should fit. No. If a witch said, hey, if you want to attach spirits to this book, go bury it at a crossroads for 3 days, then that's what they did.
Yes.
So, it would be absolutely wrong to be what they call a grimoire purist, and, well, you need to get the Heptameron, and you need to follow it, or you won't get anywhere, or the Book of Abramelin, or the Key of Solomon, whatever, what have you, whatever their favorite book is. That book is not the be-all and end-all. That book is not the path. It's just one choice among many to get you started, and then the spirits will take over teaching you, and your personal practice will take on a life and a form of its own that will not resemble that original source material. I mean, it's going to resemble it, again, it's everything I do is Solomonic, but it no longer resembles any of the established rituals that are in the existing grimoires. They're my own.
Right, because you've actually become a Solomonic magician.
Right, and even if I wasn't Solomonic, I could take everything I've learned and apply it to another system that I'm using. Not to make a Solomonic version of that system, but just the magic that I've learned. How to make offerings, how to build relationships with spirits.
Behold the exorcist in the center of the exorcism, right? I mean, you've actually achieved that title, so you get to actually be a Solomonic magician. So you can write Solomonic works now, and people can suck it up if they don't like it, Buttercup.
But even in anyone else's personal practice, once you have made that connection, you've got your familiars, you've got your head spirit, or you've got, even if it's not a head spirit, it's just patrons like Yophiel is to me, or Michael is to me. They care about me. They'll help me out when I call on them for help. They will take over and allow you to develop, like you said, with the long conjurations. Well, they'll give you better conjurations and shorter ones. They are the ones that are going to transform your practice away from where you started, regardless of your tradition. And they're the ones that are going to give you all the secrets on how to make this stuff actually work.
Even if you look at the Heptameron, for example, I mean, there's this false debate about grimoire hopping, which I know that I've asked both of you about separately, but you're right. I mean, it's just like anyone who has success with the Goetia from the Lemegeton is effectively paying a compliment to the Heptameron because its invocations are borrowed directly, but the Heptameron, angelic seals and whatnot probably came from the Byzantine Empire, and then that stuff came from melded with the Greco-Egyptian techniques. It's kind of like watching waves on the ocean where someone says, oh, this is, the only way to go, but that's just kind of a false dichotomy. It's just like watching waves of history and influence pouring over one another.
Absolutely, or more like a river, because you can always look back upriver and see where everything had a previous source, and it never ends.
Yes. Yeah, and each overflowing of the river provides more and more sustenance. That was the key to the whole Egypto-Grecian mythos that Aaron and I end up ascribing to with this Golden Dawn rooted bullshit lodge stuff. But I mean, the Nile floods every year is sort of a big deal.
I know I've had 2 other people separately message me again. They said, ask them about 2 people said, effectively, ask both Aaron and Rufus about the scientific approach to getting the results and working in magic. Rufus, in the last podcast that we did together, you called Aaron the hopeful scientist. That's a direct quote. Yes, you said
yes.
Yes, you said that when it comes to that kind of looking at the results and kind of trying to find out what works and what doesn't. Dr. Stephen Skinner has been on record several times saying that he's only interested in what works and what doesn't, and that people give magic a bad name saying it's not scientific, but there are elements of repeatability, and does this work? If not, discard it. If it does, keep it. So can both of you kind of talk about, for naysayers who say that magic has no scientific method behind it, can you kind of talk about how you see that whole relationship between science and the scientific method?
Oh, I totally agree with Skinner on that. I've been saying that for years. Most people who say that there's no scientific method, I guess you could say, in magic, that's not really what they're saying. What they're trying to say is that the existence of spirits has never been proven by established experiments, or that the existence of magic itself is not provable by modern science. But that's a whole different subject. We may have not built a recorder that can reliably record a spirit's presence, but that doesn't mean there's no scientific method involved in magic. The rituals you do, you repeat those rituals again and again, and there are expected results. And if you don't get those expected results, you look for your mistakes and you run the ritual again until you get the expected results. So it's no different than any other scientific experiment. Mm-hmm. It's just this happens to be one that involves esoteric, things like psychic vision and, the casting of spells and talking with angels and other spirits, and those things can't be proven by any modern branch of science, but they can be proven if you undertake the time and seriously approach it and perform the rituals. You know what? I'll give you a great example. Golden Dawn.
Oh, here we go.
Yes, absolutely. When you go into the portal in the Golden Dawn, before you can even be considered for the inner order, you have to write a thesis. It's just like being in college. You have to write a thesis on your entire outer order experience.
Wow.
And what we're looking for when we go over those theses is certain key things. We're looking for certain experiences because...
that you can't talk about. You cannot talk about those in public.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to, but the point is, after going over thesis after thesis after thesis, those guys have been doing that for 30 years now. And having performed the same rituals over and over, putting people through the same process, repeating it meticulously, those theses, those students produce theses that say the same things again and again and again. We can look and see if they had shared experiences, the right experiences, or if they experienced something that shows that they kind of missed the boat somewhere. I know they do the same thing in the O.T.O. So
Nope. We don't do anything like that in the O.T.O. It's entirely within the AA. But go ahead.
Okay. See, I always get confused between the O.T.O. and the AA. You guys are wacky. But it's definitely, you can look at the entire outer order experience as a repeating experiment, and each person is the prima materia of that experiment. And you can see at the end of it, there's documented evidence in those theses, because these people aren't talking to each other. Down. Yeah, and these people aren't talking to each other. What'd you say in your thesis? I want to make sure that I put the same in mine. These are different people in different places in the world at different times from different stations in life, and yet those experiences repeat every time.
I am totally going to actually post a link to this interview to like AA groups, because what you just said is something that is so true about what we expect to see from a period of time where people are doing a certain amount of work. It has to actually be what we've seen for, the last 100 years.
Completely unique experiences. I mean, you're going to see patterns. I mean, and everyone's going to be individual. They will have completely unique experiences. But when you take it as a whole, you're reading the entire thesis and looking at their path through the outer order, everyone's fairly similar. And you can see where, they went into the earth grade, and look, all this earth stuff started happening. This person went into the air grade, and and you can see the patterns, and it makes sense.
So, all right, I might be sidetracking things, but I don't care. I mean, what if we're all doing this whole thing in sequence, and the things that pop up in AA stuff and Golden Dawn stuff and stuff that is completely uncorroborated, but it's across the human spectrum. I mean, earlier the question was something about, what do you actually expect to get out of all of this stuff? When we go through the same experiences time after time and system after system in, whether we're doing ATR stuff with Palo and Head Spirits or HGA stuff, regardless, we go through these things that are similar and comparable and directly, interchangeable. So, all right, Aaron, what if we're all doing the same thing? What's the thing we're doing? How would you put it into words, what we're actually here to accomplish? You and me, magicians like us, all the hundreds of people, thousands of people that are all interested in the stuff that we do.
Bro, do you even R.A. Wilson? Seriously?
You know what? Sometimes a little bit.
Read Prometheus Rising. The human species has evolved from reptile consciousness to alien consciousness, and then we hit the fourth circuit. By the way, the story of Eden, Adam and Eve realizing they were naked, suddenly having a concept of this thing called evil. That's about us hitting the fourth circuit, because that's our moral circuit, mental circuits I'm talking about, stage of consciousness. And right now, this whole Age of Aquarius, thing that people are twittering about, we are just beginning to move into the fifth circuit. Who are the people who represent that stage of consciousness? They're your mystics, your shamans, people who regularly go into altered states of consciousness and talk with hyperdimensional beings because they think it's fun. Those are the people who are the fifth circuit. This is the continued evolution of the human race that we're talking about. So everything that you talked about standing on the shoulders of giants. Someday, maybe hundreds of years from now, there will be people who talk about standing on our shoulders. And that's our job, to be a link in the chain, to provide the next wave, the next stage in human understanding, in human evolution, and making sure that all of this is available to the next generation of poor lost seekers who are looking for something to guide them. That's our job. So.
Yeah, within the mass, the EGC mass that we do, like monthly. Anyway, weekly here in Minneapolis, if anybody's local. The mass includes this list of saints that Crowley identified as those who bore the light of truth throughout the dark eons. And it goes back to, as far as we can look back, it goes like Carolus Malignus, the martyr, and, Muhammad, Moses. I mean, all these people are listed in our creed, that we are standing on the shoulders of. And currently there are some masses that include people like Grady McMurtry. It's about continuing this process, and maybe someday you and I will be considered giants, but I really hope that they understand they are really a midget. I mean, all things considered.
Oh, jeez. Well, and see, this kind of touches on obviously this isn't the first time that, you've had this kind of Golden Dawn, O.T.O. discussion, but you're both eerily hitting on these commonalities, especially when you're talking about shared experiences, and even though there's different rituals and grades and things like that, am I wrong in thinking that, really both paths that you both are treading do have this kind of cross-pollination where one wonders, is there a gigantic, subtle karmic connection between that? That definitely can't be a coincidence, or is it? I don't know.
No, Aaron.
The Western mystery tradition.
Yeah, basically. We're all Rosicrucians.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I see their ads on Facebook all the time.
Oh, God, don't get me started. But yeah,
no, seriously. Like Aaron is like Rosicrucianism, and I'm like Reformed Rosicrucianism. The O.T.O. is sort of like...
Now, see, I don't know what he's talking about. I never state that I'm a Rosicrucian.
Are you kidding?
Ever.
Everything
never
you do is Rosicrucian.
Never state it. It's something that I just don't do.
But it doesn't matter whether you state it or not. Isn't it part of what you are? I mean, doesn't the Fama represent the whole great work and the
absolutely
alchemical
love
transfer.
the Fama.
I mean, what exactly is
I
that
just won't go around saying
seven-sided
that I'm
room?
Rosicrucian.
But what's the seven-sided room all about in the Golden Dawn?
What's seven-sided room? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. The something of Christian somebody or other. Rosenkreutz? I mean,
I don't know.
Come on now. I mean,
you're subjects upon which I have no information.
Are you seriously? You can't talk about it?
We can talk about anything that's been published, basically.
Okay, so basically everything has been published. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about everything. Mm-hmm. So, all right, whose tomb is it? I mean, whose casket is it in the room with the seven sides that you go into that our day was so right? Exactly. You know, so we're all.
That doesn't mean I know anything about it.
Oh, you fine.
read the 5-6. No, you can't.
Yeah, oh no, I can't. I can't. You know.
Can't.
It's fine.
Are you part of one of those orders that doesn't let you read other material?
No.
Outside material.
No, actually, I'm just.
Are you in a cult? Are you in a cult? Or it's a cult.
When it comes to the way that people catalog magical results and catalog associations and correspondences. Here's something that Rufus said, and I'm paraphrasing here, and people can go back and listen to the interview, but I just like to get you guys talking about it because I think it's an interesting point about cataloging things or analyzing post-experiences. So what Rufus said, and I'm paraphrasing here, is he said that the Golden Dawn approach is more of, if something works, you need to effectively quantify it. But in that quantification of the experience, you actually can denigrate the experience itself. And the example that Rufus gave was, he used the analogy that, say, if you take your wife out to dinner, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rufus, but you said if you take your wife out to dinner, you give her roses, it's your anniversary, you have a wonderful, perfect, romantic evening, and then, you know, the Golden Dawn approach or the kind of over-analytical approach might be akin to saying, that was a great evening. So if I give my wife exactly 8.5 roses and I take her to this exact movie and I do this exact thing, I will have another perfect evening. And it's this cataloging that Rufus was arguing could kind of constipate the actual experience of, or the relationship. I assume you'd want to comment on that, but is there, in both the O.T.O. and the Golden Dawn, is there this kind of mandatory cataloging of experiences or correspondences, or how does that whole thing work?
No, there's none of that. Most of the analytical stuff
Lies.
is before the ritual. After, no, really.
No,
we're
talking about the ritual.
We do our rituals, and then we discuss our experiences afterward, like anybody else would.
But prior to ritual, what do you do?
Prior to ritual? As in what?
All right, no. The argument was that in our systems, we tend to overthink things by setting up everything based on 777, for example. Correspondences. I don't know if you guys actually use 777, but...
Nope.
Okay.
Right, but don't you spend most of your time putting it together according to the correspondences?
No. I mean, do the correspondences come into play? Sure. But they come in beforehand. They come in when you're putting a ritual together. You know, if I want to do a Mercury ceremony, I'll make sure that there's an orange altar cloth and that the candles are orange and that the number 8 is incorporated everywhere that I can incorporate. I do the same thing in the Solomonic system, actually. But as for the experiences, no. There's none of that overanalyzation. We do the rituals and we have our experiences.
But don't you walk away thinking that if you do the orange cloth and the orange candles that you'll get mercurial energies?
Yeah. But that's
right.
The system. But that's not overanalyzing the results.
It is too.
Well, but see, I bring this question up for our listeners because there are people who I've spoken with who are very intimidated by both the O.T.O. and the Golden Dawn, you know, and I ask why. I mean, I'm not a member, but I ask why do they think that way, and they say, oh my gosh, it just seems like this. And someone said this about the O.T.O. as well, Rufus, saying that it's just a quote a wall of just intense learning and correspondences, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually do that. But it sounds like from what Aaron, you're saying, and Rufus, what you're saying is that, yes, whether you join, say, whether you're a member of the O.T.O. or the Golden Dawn, there are correspondencies and history and certain relationships that you have to learn, but that those are not the end. Those are just tools to help you achieve
Those are just... Let me tell you what I tell I actually covered this in the classes on Hermeticism. I'll tell you exactly what I tell my students, okay? When you're studying, when you're beginning, you're going to spend a lot of time going through these lists and memorizing these names and colors and numbers and correspondences. But that is just for the learning phase. When you get up to do a practical ritual, let's say, you face the south and you inscribe a red pentagram from the fire angle of the pentagram and you call out the name of fire, Elohim. You are not standing there in that moment reciting in your head thousands of correspondences of what fire means. And fire is connected to red, which is connected to this incense, which is connected to this magical tool, which is connected to this direction, which is connected to this. You are not consciously thinking that. You're just performing a ritual where you face this direction and say this name. However, because you have spent hours, weeks, months, even years beforehand studying all those correspondences and making them a part of your mental structure, you've literally created new pathways in your brain between neurons that didn't have them before. And when you call out the name Elohim in your ritual, subconsciously, that entire process of association takes place. From red to south, to fire, to Elohim, to the Archangel Michael, to the Seraphim, everything that Michael and the Seraphim are connected to, and it literally flashes through your brain like a lightning flash, lighting up entire portions of your brain at once. So the correspondences are not meant to be a shackle that you hold yourself to during and after the ritual. They're part of the learning process and creating mental pathways in your brain for these energies to flow through when you're invoking them.
Aaron, that is such perfect advice, especially for new people who might be hearing this for the first time about the Golden Dawn. Rufus, the same question would go to you, though, for the O.T.O. Do you find that its approach is the exact same when it comes to learning the kind of learning phase, so to speak, and all the correspondences? Is that also a similarity in terms of approach?
Heck no.
Okay.
No, the O.T.O. is... All right, within the organizations that were set up by Aleister Crowley, the AA is the closest thing to what you described in the Golden Dawn, Aaron. That is where all the correspondences are memorized and the rituals are performed and the practice is made and the diaries are kept, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in the O.T.O., what we do is we get together, we do initiations that bring lay people who are perhaps magicians, but not necessarily such, through the different stages of birth, life, and death in a symbolic way. And that's what the O.T.O's initiations are about. There's no magical training. It is officially, per the outer head of the order, not a magical teaching organization, and we don't teach magic. It's
sounds like the outer order of the Golden Dawn, actually.
Right, exactly. Almost as if it was...
and the spiritual alchemy are the point of the outer order.
Right, and the spiritual alchemy is recognized, and I mean, the O.T.O. is sort of like the fraternal side of Thelema. The EGC is the more priestly side, the spiritual side that conjures gods and goddesses and stuff, and does rituals with them. But the AA does the actual magical study where you study the correspondences and stuff. And the O.T.O. is somewhere in the middle. And the O.T.O. is sort of like the spaghetti dinner club of fraternal organizations. We are a place where magicians can get together and talk about magic. And we have Solomonic Goetic magicians. We have Scott Michael Stenwick locally, who is an amazing Enochian magician who thinks that everything Aaron writes is stupid. He doesn't actually. He doesn't put it. He doesn't put it that way, Aaron. Just for the record,
I've read what he's said.
Yeah,
I've read what he said.
It's just he presents.
He may not be my biggest fan. We'll just put it that way.
Perhaps it might be because he read what you wrote. I don't know.
It could be.
So
could be.
But no, I mean, the O.T.O is just a place where magicians can hang out and celebrate things like the ceremony of the Gnostic Mass and just have a good time. It's entirely a sorority/fraternity kind of organization where we just get together and have fun.
For the listeners out there who do have your books and have read them, can you share, each of you, one or two pieces of magical advice in terms of things to either absolutely do no matter what system that you're choosing to do, or conversely, things that people should avoid and like pitfalls that they should never ever do? Aaron, you want to take a crack at that?
We've already covered a lot of it. I mean, stuff you should absolutely do. Build those relationships. Don't fall for this that it's all in your head nonsense, because it's really not. Right. These spirits really do exist, and they'll talk to you and they'll help you if they think that you're worthy, that you're someone that they actually want to hang around with. So make offerings to them, set up altars to them, talk to them, and learn from them. They will teach you things. That's what you should do. And pitfalls, good Lord, I don't know. I'm gonna let. I think Rufus Opus knows way more about pitfalls than I do, so I'm going to go ahead and
Oh, the gauntlet is thrown. The gauntlet is thrown.
If it wasn't fair, I might argue against it. But in truth, seriously, the pitfalls are don't get caught up in your own press. The more you actually do the work, the more people will respond to you and think that you are something special, but you can never forget the fact that you're just, somebody with a computer and a conjuration system. You're not that great, and remember that you are always performing, the most basic work that's going to take you to the next level. And also, whenever you work with demons, do not say by any means necessary, as long as nobody gets hurt. It's not a good phrase to use. In my experience, and if I could pass anything along to the next generation, find your true will, get to know your holy guardian angel, establish spiritual relationships, but do not say by any means necessary to a fucking demon. It's not going to work out the way you think.
Touche. We'll make sure to put that phrase everywhere over the YouTube description of this video. By any means necessary.
Are you kidding? That's going to be on his tombstone. Here lies Frauder Rufus Opus. Never say by any means necessary to a fucking demon.
You know what? That's fine. If that's what it takes, I'll be happy if that's my legacy. I will be really happy if that's my legacy.
Well, on that note, by not any means necessary, we won't get that extreme. But I do want to ask, there's a ton of listeners out there who, and I see them all the time on both of your Facebook pages, but who are constantly wanting to know and check out either new things that you're doing or where to find you. So Aaron, can you talk about, you're obviously teaching classes right now. You have the Doc Solomon's Occult Curios page. There's your blog. Can you talk about where can people find you, and what else would you like them to know about ways to check out what you're doing?
Well, you can find me in several places. If you want to keep up to date on what's going on with me, my Facebook page is where to go. It's just under Aaron Leitch. I have a blog, which is aaronleitch.wordpress.com. I update it periodically. I also write for Llewellyn's Magic blog, so if you go to llewellyn.com and look for their magic blog, you'll find the guest posting there. And of course, there's the Doc Solomon's Facebook page, Doc Solomon's website itself. You can find the Doc Solomon's website is just docsolomons.com. So it'll be easy to run into me if you look for me and keep up with what I'm doing.
I'm actually on sort of a hiatus right now, and I have been for about the last year or so. I'm not. I recently lost my RufusOpus.com website. It's not out there anymore. People who go there should not go there, actually, because it has viruses and stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of in a transition period. I might be writing more over the next year or so, and I may be creating a whole new set of websites around the idea of applied hermetics. Right now, I'm just gonna try to keep silent on that one.
The last question I have is more of a fun one, but someone told me to ask you both this, so I'm going to do this. Is if you could describe the other person in one word, what would that word be? So I know that we could leave it up to the listeners to interpret things either way, but Rufus, if you were to describe your friend / nemesis Aaron Leitch in one word, what would that word be for the listeners out there?
I mean, in one word? Seriously? That's kind of limiting.
Well,
I can think of several.
Buffoon, you got Joker,
I'm going to actually go with the high road here, because I know Aaron won't. Magician.
Magician. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Look, respect.
Aaron, what do you think? What do you think? How would you describe Mr. Opus?
Neoplatonist. And that can be a compliment or an insult depending on which group you're in.
Oh, wait! Can I take mine back?
Rufus Opus, Aaron Leitch, thank you both for taking the time, and thank you so much for coming on the Glitch Bottle podcast. We hope to do it again soon.
Sure.
Absolutely, thanks a lot, and nice hanging out with you guys, and I'll see you online there, Frater.
Yep, and Aaron, just for the record, you suck.
You are absolutely an egotistical bastard.
Well, you know what? I have to be to keep up with people like you.
Always trying to keep up with me, Frater.
You know what, though?
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Glitch Bottle Podcast and helping us uncork the uncommon this fine day or night or wherever you happen to occupy space-time in your occult lairs, your summoning towers, or your cloistered libraries of the esoterically awesome. You can check out previous episodes and other magical Glitch Bottle news on YouTube, youtube.com/glitchbottle, and subscribe and download free episodes anytime on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and on Spreaker.com. Just search Glitch Bottle and enjoy. Also, please make sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Glitch Bottle, all one word. Our intro music is the track Tornado by David Zeste. Our magical interest is fueled by sincerity, passion, amazing guests, and a copious amount of clinking coffee cups. Until next time, this is Alexander Eth reminding you to invoke often, uncork the uncommon, and keep the light.